would have never said a year ago that this would happen on my campus. 30-something% Jews, proud Jews, Zionists, you know, such strong Jewish and Israel community, pro-Israel communities, this would never happen. It happened. People were being, you know, verbally, maliciously attacked for saying, I believe in the right to a state of Israel. The anti-Israel sentiment has only escalated. The campus is going to become more and more polarized.
Things have just gotten a lot crazier and more negative on campus.
I've been at university campuses discussing and dealing with this issue, and I've seen the very difficult situation that Jewish students face.
They are on the front line. They're the ones who are exposed.
There are going to be moments where you feel scared, to be frank, because it's general large groups of people who seem intimidating and who are very loud and who seem to have power in numbers.
The negativity and the loudness, the abrasiveness on campus make it difficult for me to be open about supporting Israel.
It's not the most popular point of view to have to be supportive of Israel.
Shame on you! Shame on you!
This past semester, we've seen speakers, we've seen a much larger presence on social media, we've seen various protests.
The tactics on campus have changed. For example, Students for Justice in Palestine have become more organized, more strategic, more focused. Working within the system, they've learned how to manipulate the student government. They gather under the umbrella of BDS, which is boycott, divestment, and sanctions, and we're seeing a real problem on far too many campuses. On many campuses, eviction notices are being used to push out anti-Israel propaganda.
New at 11, tensions between Jews and Palestinians tonight. Some fake flyers passed out by students.
The flyer has the headline, Eviction Notice. We regret to inform you that your suite is scheduled for demolition in 3 days.
Underneath it said, this is a false eviction notice, but it's very similar to real eviction notices that get distributed to Palestinian families in an effort to ethnically cleanse the region of the Palestinian Arab population, which is so far from the truth.
People felt intimidated that these were slipped under the door at night anonymously.
I think a lot of students feel harassed and uncomfortable in their own living situation.
When you're in the middle of finals and you get an eviction notice, it's stressful, it's scary, and you don't really have time to process it.
Of course, there can be legitimate criticism of Israel. If you take a look at Israel's news, you see an energetic debate every single day of the week. But there's a difference between criticizing and actual anti-Semitism.
With anti-Zionism, often it takes the form of anti-Semitism, so there's kind of this fine line.
Definitions of anti-Semitism change. The way you oppose Jews in any given era is different. Now we live in the time of the Jewish state. So because this is the era of the Jewish state, the attack of anti-Semites is focused on that.
Anti-Semitism it's like racism. It's not a fashionable thing to do. It's not really it's an illegal activity in many places. But anti-Zionism is not illegal, and it becomes a proxy for anti-Semitism.
When they talk about Zionists and they protest vehemently, we are not anti-Semitic, we are anti-Zionist. Now there are certain ways to test this.
I like Natan Sharansky's definition of anti-Semitism. He calls it the 3 Ds. If we see that Israel is either delegitimized, demonized, or we see a double standard in the argument against Israel, that would qualify as anti-Semitism. With delegitimization, Israel's very founding is questioned. And if Israel is illegal in the first place, then the Jewish people have no right to be there, to defend themselves.
They're not saying, let's have these borders. They're saying, let's have all of Israel gone. Israel has no right to exist.
From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free.
What it essentially means is that from the river, meaning the Jordan River, to the sea, meaning the Mediterranean Sea, Palestine will be free, meaning all of Israel, as it currently exists, will be dissolved, and in its place will be a Palestinian state.
Two-state solution is off the table. No. one state. And check this out. One state, majority rules. Us, the Muslims.
In focusing so much on the Palestinians' right of self-determination, which I totally believe in, people completely forget about the Jewish right of self-determination.
Zionism must be destroyed. It must be gotten rid of. Every aspect of it.
With demonization, oftentimes we see context removed and attributing an evil intention to the Israelis as though whatever they do is not for security reasons, it is because they want to torture, abuse, or humiliate the Palestinians. There can be thousands of rockets that come into Israel, and then Israel responds. They only look at the response.
I don't think it's acceptable criticism of Israel when Israel becomes villainized, when Israel becomes the big bad devil.
You see these pamphlets that depict Jews with hooked noses and sucking children's blood, and I think that is classic anti-Semitism.
Israel, Israel, you can't hide! We charge you with genocide!
They literally make up things about the Jewish state.
Most grotesque of all, and unfortunately quite common, including on campuses, is the comparison with Nazi Germany, the ultimate scandalous inversion of our time. This is something so twisted, so repulsive, and yet commonplace.
Students for Justice in Palestine hold an event called Israel Apartheid Week, where they lie about Israel for a week in a way that demonizes the state of Israel.
The Nakba was a campaign of genocidal ethnic cleansing initiated by the Israeli regime to carve out their own colonial entity in the Middle East.
You have students using guerrilla theater out in the middle of campus.
There's people who are pretending to be soldiers at checkpoints.
Filthy Arab, an Israeli life is worth more than all of you combined.
They were having a die-in, which is students lying, kind of pretending to be dead in the middle of campus. They're kind of trying to intimidate and frighten people on campus.
With double standard, Israel is being held to a higher standard than any other country in the world.
If we just look at the issues that people are focusing on, human rights issues in general, these are issues that are not even on par with the human rights violations that are happening in so many other places in the world. Syria, China, other countries that are committing atrocious human rights violations that aren't ever discussed.
The one conflict that the world seems more concerned about than any other is the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians.
The BDS movement, which is boycott, divestment, and sanctions, is a complete double standard.
BDS is spreading across U.S. campuses.
Frankly, this has gone global.
The boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement is really what's changing the equation.
To say Israel is the one that we want to call out, the Jewish state, and we want to boycott, divest, and sanction that country, is to me where you find the anti-Semitism, because why are we holding the Jewish state to a higher standard or a different standard than other people?
What we see in their tactic generally is that they push out a lot of anti-Israel propaganda and then call for punishment, and the punishment is the boycott or the divestment from companies doing business in Israel. During the last 2 years, we've seen a greater frequency of the introducing of divestment resolutions to student governments.
With a vote of 20 to 12 to 1, that passes.
Pro-Israel students who spoke at the Central Student Government vote faced threats from various groups.
All of these disparaging insults, accompanied by threats of violence, are messages that I and other members of Central Student Government have been receiving this past week.
Students were also called dirty Jews, things like this. Especially those on Central Student Government were called on the phone saying, "We know where you live, like vote with us or else."
To say that this is a non-violent, peaceful movement, I would seriously disagree, especially with the number of emails and harassing texts and harassing voicemails and harassing calls that have caused me to miss class for a week.
If divestment passes, which it has on a few campuses, it gives it an air of legitimacy.
Even if they're not actually going to pull the funds away, what it does do is pass a statement, and it makes it seem that the student body is against Israel.
When there are times with high pressure, like during this divestment vote, Students are definitely intimidated. A lot of the pro-Palestinian students were screaming and just very offensive towards the pro-Israel students who spoke at the meeting. Ultimately, the vote was to reject the resolution, and for now, things are calm, but we definitely expect BDS to be back again, and we don't think that this is over at all.
It's very uncomfortable for students who care about Israel.
It's a little bit scary because I kind of never know how students will react to my pro-Israel sentiment. Even openly talking with other students on campus, and professors especially.
I'm proud to be a member of Faculty for Palestine.
Professors are our biggest challenge. Students come and go, but with professors, they stay.
They're role models. Many of them have tenure, and so they can say and teach whatever they want.
So we can say this, and Hamas is a terrorist organization, sure. They also do great healthcare and kindergartens. But Hamas doesn't recognize Israel. So what?
You see it in Columbia, Saliba, Khalidi, Masad. They're all tenured professors, and they're all espousing their very anti-Israel and distorted views on the students.
Israel is one of the worst offenders worldwide. It is probably today the only racist country by law.
Israel was basically founded as a Jewish state on land that was ethnically cleansed from its indigenous population.
Pro-Israel students sitting in classrooms like that feel like they can't voice their opinions. If they raise their hands, they may have grade reprisals.
Nothing could be more opposed to the spirit of what a university education should really be.
As a student, the power dynamics are there. I feel powerless in a sense and very intimidated that these figures of authority and academic knowledge are basically invalidating everything I support.
We Palestinians have nothing to dialogue about with Zionists.
It's really hard to dialogue with people who don't want to have anything to do with you.
As a person who spent much of his life speaking Hebrew...
Michael Oren! Propagating murder is not an expression of free speech!
Shut up!
Whenever pro-Israel students have events, Students for Justice in Palestine will literally shout down the speaker.
This is not an example of free speech!
They will stage a walkout, in some cases even curse at the speaker. They're notorious for doing this.
My only purpose today is that this event is shut down. Donnie Darwin speaks for Israeli apartheid. Donnie Darwin speaks for Israeli apartheid. And genocide at the hands of the IDF.
It sounds like it was a very specific thing that happened nationally. They had their very specific script that they were reading from a piece of paper about how Noni Darwish supports Israeli apartheid. It's nationally organized. It's not something that students came up with at UNM.
A Jewish person who's not secure and confident in their Jewish identity and doesn't know enough about Judaism, about Zionism, about Israel, is going to be much more exposed, much more vulnerable.
Perhaps one of the most important things Jewish students need is that the education in what is happening, what the situation is, and it's very complex, so it's not an easy subject to get your head around, but I think it's worth doing that in order to stand up for yourself, stand up for your Judaism, and stand up for the State of Israel.
There are so many students across the United States and beyond who support Israel and who love Israel, so we all need to rise and see. We are Zionists and we're proud.
Israel is a progressive, liberal democracy, and we see the same values in Israel as we do in the United States, whether it's freedom of religion, freedom of the press, gay rights, women's rights.
It's important to be advocating for Israel, and students really can make a difference.
I'd like to thank you all for coming out. 8,000 people for Israel! The message from Congress is clear. We stand with Israel!
For people who care about Israel on campus, now more than ever is a time for you to show leadership. It's a time for you to learn more so that you can teach more on your campus. And you'll be surprised if you're vocal and proud how many people will come to you and be part of a movement to support the State of Israel.